Kamusta mga Mare? This is your host, Jasmine, and I'd like to welcome you all back to our Laban Mare podcast, where we highlight women leadership to provide inspiration and positivity to all of our listeners. Women's participation in civil service strengthens democracy. Their lived experience bring unique perspectives to policymaking, often prioritizing social issues like education and healthcare. Studies suggest that this can lead to more comprehensive solutions that benefit the entire population. Additionally, a more gender balanced civil service fosters public trust and promotes equality by ensuring the government reflects the society it serves. Right now, I am with Dr. Kisha Karis the Program Officer for Food Security and Nutrition and Universal Healthcare of Angat Buhay Foundation. Good afternoon po, Ms. Kisha. Kamusta naman po kayo since medyo busy po yata kayo sa Angat Buhay Foundation?
Hi, good afternoon. First, thank you so much for inviting me to join you for this podcast series. Yes, medyo busy kami ngayon, but winding down din since we're about to enter yung 2 holidays natin for the Holy Week. So, yeah.
Can you tell us more about your day-to-day life? Like kung ano po ba yung ginagawa niyo sa Angat Buhay Foundation?
So as you mentioned, I am the program manager for food security, nutrition, and universal healthcare. Most of the time, actually, nasa office ako sa Quezon City. So that is where we have our office as well as yung Museo ng Pag-asa. I'm hoping that you could visit us after this podcast series. But yeah, there are times na I go to the field to do monitoring visits. Dun sa sites ng programs namin, but more often than not, I coordinate from our office in Quezon City.
Okay. Actually, naka-visit na po actually yung activity chair po namin, tsaka ako activity chair nung last week, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. So to further dive into our topic lang po, so who or what inspired you to become a woman leader in the social work scene?
Actually, for me, being a leader or being in a position like this is not something new. Kasi first, yung parents ko both in government service, and as far as I can remember, yung mom ko has always held a leadership position in her unit. And then I'm the eldest of 3, tas lahat kami babae. So the way we were brought up, parang hindi rin naman siya naging concern at any point. I also studied in an all-girls school for 13 years. So, basically, wala din naman akong naging experience growing up na my gender was used against me or used to demean or put me down. But instead, parang mas naging avenue yon for me to be exposed to a lot of opportunities, a lot of experiences outside yung formal schooling ko. And then, ever since a child, I was a child, gusto ko na rin talagang maging doctor. And I think yun yung naging eventual tahe into me going into civic service. So, just to give you a brief background then, I did my clerkship and internship in a public hospital. So, I did it in PGH. I graduated 2019. Got my license the same year, and initially ang plan ko talaga is to like take a year off muna, try to rest before I go back into formal training or pursuing further studies. But then nagkaroon ng pandemic, so I went back to the hospital. I engaged in different COVID-19 initiatives, and basically that whole training experience and that whole experience with the pandemic exposed ako to working with people from different walks of life, and pinaka naging fulfilling talaga for me is to pursue yung public health, which is why when the opportunity came for me to work with Angat Buhay, I immediately grabbed it. So yun.
So, ano naman po yung parang recent inspirations nyo to continue answering the call for civic service?
It's actually very frustrating to be in the civic service kasi you see all these issues, you see all these concerns every day, but limited lang din kami in what we can do given also the limitation on our resources. Like for example, in Angat Buhay, we're only 20 people in the office, but our impact is magnified because we work with a lot of volunteer organizations, not only in the Philippines, but also in other parts of the world. Sobrang iba rin working with the team, especially under the leadership of Attorney Lenny, kasi Attorney Lenny is very hands-on when it comes to the organization. Actually, even during the office of the Vice President, sobrang hands-on na niya. Like, there were times when I was still affiliated with them during the Bayan E Consulta na she goes on duty with me, taking the graveyard shift. So siya yung usually kasama ko in those early morning hours. And I think recently lumabas yung preview magazine cover nila, and
Yes.
she mentioned something that's very appropriate or apt for how I view then my work in the development sector, which is yung spiritual muscle, ang empathy. And if na-expose ka na sa realities, ang hirap ng pumikit. Ang hirap ng parang baliwalain kung ano man yung nakakita mo. So rather than be sad or be disappointed with how things are, parang I choose to channel my energy into doing something positive for what I'm seeing.
So, speaking of civic service lang po, do you know or like naka-encounter na po ba kayo ng some common misconceptions about civic service and how do you address it?
Actually, not so much, but I guess that's because relatively new lang din naman ako in civic service. Like I've always been used to yung government setup, which is where I trained and where I came from. So right now, the adjustment is still ongoing kasi parang 2 years pa lang din naman since I actually entered into the development sector. And we're learning a lot, working with other veteran organizations within the organization. Definitely one thing that we did expect was the limitation in resources. It's definitely more difficult to get resources right now, unlike before na you have the budget approved by the government, which is allotted to the office. Right now, like for every intervention or for every project that we want to implement, we have to be the ones to find kung saan namin kukunin yung funding for it.
So talagang hanapan po ng sponsors if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Just to... So, since you're in the non-government organization nga po, what does the celebration of Women's Month mean to you?
Celebration of Women's Month, I think, is very important for still medyo dominantly patriarchal society like ours, kasi it highlights the different accomplishments of women across. Parang it's a chance for us to be on spotlight just for that whole month, and it gives us an idea of what is possible given that we are provided the space and the platform to hone our skills, to improve our knowledge, and to be of service or to contribute something to society. Kasi parang I think yun nga, given my background then, parang it has never been, or gender has never been an issue like for me in determining whether I can do something, kasi that wasn't the environment I was exposed to growing up. So I think na parang pag naka-highlight all the lahat ng accomplishments ng kababaihan, lalo during the celebration of Women's Month, we see na okay, so baka nga hindi naman talaga related sa gender, or hindi gender ang naglalagay ng limitations sa atin as to what we can and can't do. Maybe it's just something that we've grown up with, something that we became accustomed to, and dahil nga hindi naman siya innate sa atin, baka it's something also that we can explore na baka pwedeng ma-change yung mindset going into these types of discussion. So, kasi minsan di natin napapansin na kahit parang ang simple-simpleng bagay na or simple-simpleng idea or paniniwala na kasi babae ako, ganyan, hindi natin na-realize how big it actually influences the way we view the world, the way we make our decisions. So, parang it's time then for us to stray away from the traditional roles, beliefs, na like for example, certain roles or certain jobs are only for a certain gender, or certain activities at home are only for a certain gender. So yeah.
Ayun din. Actually, you mentioned na parang you grew up din na lahat kayo babae. So like, yung society itself, parang empowering for women siya. So, can you like explain to us, for you lang po, like in your own description, what does women empowerment mean to you?
I think women empowerment is knowing yourself beyond gender. It's more of knowing yourself in terms of what are your likes, dislikes, what are you more attuned to, what draws you in, what gives you parang inspiration to act on things, and using all those to pursue what it is that you want to. Kasi parang um listening, or parang giving a platform to the noise that surrounds us as people, it's so easy to become distracted with just following what the world tells you to do. Pero once you have that agency na para, but this is who I am and this is what I want to do, and parang using that agency to act, I think that's basically what women empowerment means.
So, in your position, in what ways do you see women's leadership and civic service intersecting with broader social justice movements?
Okay. Well, historically, women have been seen as the lesser gender. Like, while it's not true, as we've been realizing as the years go by, parang it's a belief that still continues to permeate the society and influences the way we view a lot of things. So I guess parang inspiring women leaders to speak up, share their experiences, is a way for us to promote basic respect and empathy, na parang you don't respect someone because they're related to something else, or you don't respect someone in relation to something else. Parang you respect the person just because they exist, regardless of whether they're whatever gender they are. And I think that is also something the world desperately needs right now, the recognition of each person being more than whatever label society puts on them. And it's a fight, it's part of that larger fight, yung parang recognizing that women can be leaders, women can be whatever they want to be. It's part of that bigger fight of just promoting compassion, empathy among everyone, and realizing na it doesn't do us anything to pull each other down. It doesn't do us anything to disregard whatever achievements anyone has ever had.
So, in the office of the Vice President, we've known na parang you led the Bayan E Consulta as a volunteer-driven response to the COVID-19 pandemic. So, can you enlighten us and also the audience about this initiative, and how has this program impacted the lives of many Filipinos?
Okay, sige. So as I mentioned before, I initially planned to take a year off, but then nagkaroon ng pandemic in 2020. So I went back into participating in different COVID-19 initiatives. It was April 2021, Holy Week then, as I recall, na nagpatawag si then Vice President Lani Robredo ng parang meeting with the different healthcare agencies, because it was at that time when we were receiving news that sobrang punong-puno na yung hospitals. A lot of patients sometimes don't even reach the hospital kasi nga tumataas lalo yung cases of COVID-19. So during that meeting, it was proposed na we have this telemedicine platform that caters to mild cases in Metro Manila para lang to help decongest the health facilities and the hospital so they can focus on the more critical and severe cases. By that time, I already had experience working with a telemedicine initiative. Pero nung time na yon, ang purpose namin was really to help the local governments track the number of COVID-19 cases. So given that background, I was asked to like prepare a very short, very brief proposal on how we'll implement the telemedicine platform. And then, siguro so Holy Week yon, Thursday, Friday na-approve yung proposal. Monday, the week after, we launched Bayan E Consulta. So, nung time na yon, it was me and two other general practitioners, young doctors, si Dr. Robredo and Dr. 𝐷𝐻. So we worked together to implement that first round ng Bayan E Consulta, and we were working with the staff members of the Office of the Vice President. So initially, ang offering namin, ang services na in-offer namin was consultations, just a chance for patients to get seen by a doctor. And if they need to either stay at home for isolation or need to be admitted to the hospital, ma-advise sila right away. But then, as the months went on, dumami yung request. Sobrang naging diverse yung request. So, nagkaroon ng time na hinihingian na rin kami ng oxygen tanks. Nagkaroon ng time na nag-request na if we can provide food packs for them kasi the whole family is in isolation so they can't go out. Laboratory tests, if we can provide like a technician who would go to their homes to do the laboratory tests kasi nga may COVID sila so they can't go out. So we expanded the services until essentially we were running a virtual hospital during the pandemic. So from just teleconsultations, nagkaroon kami ng emergency services. We had an ambulance with a complete team of emergency medical technicians. We had a mobile laboratory. We were providing medical assistance and burial assistance. We also had our own yung COVID kit, which I think is what we were known for during that time. So it's basically a package that contains mga over-the-counter medicine, monitoring equipment, and then we have some of our volunteers checking in on the patients until the end of their prescribed isolation period. And we were running like that. So nakasurvive kami ng mga 3 surges. So we had that one in April 2021. We had another, yung Delta surge in August to September of 2021. And then we had the Omicron surge December to around January, February of 2022. Until we ended our run under the Office of the Vice President noong May 31, 2022. So right before the transition to the new administration. And by then, I think we've served like 56,000 patients during the course of that year and a half. So much so that when we launched Angat Buhay as an NGO, it was one of the first programs under my pillar, so yung universal healthcare, nutrition and food security na in-implement namin agad. So we launched the foundation noong July 1, 2022, and then July 25, 2022, na-launch na ulit yung Bayan E Consulta. And this time, given nga the new context, we had to limit the services that we offer, so we limited it to just teleconsultations. But syempre nagbabago pa rin siya given the need that arises. Kaya I'm very happy to be working with such dedicated volunteers as well. Sila yung reason why BK has been such a valued service for the last 2-3 years.
So, Miss Kisha, even before, kahit na nasa Office of the Vice President pa yung project ng Bayanihan E Consulta, volunteers na rin po talaga yung kasama nyo? When, like, okay.
So, dahil nga dumadami din yung patients namin, we called for volunteers, both medical and non-medical volunteers. And then we were very overwhelmed then by the response kasi around like 2,000-3,000 volunteers combined actually joined to help us out. Like umabot sa point na we had to close the registration of volunteers kasi it also naman depends on the number of patients that we were getting. But we continued engaging with them in other ways, like dami rin kasing naging COVID initiatives nung time na yon aside from the Bayan E Consulta. So we had yung Vaccine Express, we had yung Swab Cab. So we were redirecting some of our volunteers then. But then the volunteers then who stayed with us in VEK, they were so enthusiastic then about helping out. So they were also participating in those other initiatives as well.
So, since parang maraming surges ngayong napagdaanan ng Bayanihan E Consulta, was there some challenges na na-encounter nyo nung time na in-implement siya? And how does did the challenge mold you into a resilient women leader?
So parang dalawa, I guess, yung parang big categories of challenges that we encountered. First was, while we were on a telemedicine platform, we were also working within the healthcare system. And at that time, yun nga, we can't deny na talagang ubusan ng hospital beds. Even yung healthcare workers ay napapagod din. So, the cases that we couldn't manage in our platform, we also had to refer them outside the platform. So, very stressful environment and time din yun for us kasi most of the time, wala talagang available na bed or tawag mo dito, resources for the patients. And then on the other hand, we worked with a lot of non-medical volunteers at the time. And while ako, like trained naman ako na healthcare worker, more or less I'm more accustomed to the environment and how heavy it can sometimes get. Our volunteers were not. So I guess yung biggest learning experience ko rin nung time na yon was sobrang bigat ng responsibility being placed on us because we were dealing with thousands and thousands of lives. But it's very important for us to remain calm under pressure, to remain rational and logical under pressure kasi we were dealing with lives, both our patients' lives and our volunteers' lives. And if we are not careful, baka we were doing more harm than good for our patients. Like, ayon din naman natin na umabot sa time na dahil sobrang bigat na nung nararanasan ng volunteers natin, maging patients na rin sila sa Bayan E Consulta, for example. And yung patients natin, regardless of how difficult it was to find resources for them, we push kasi yun nga, lives were at stake basically nung time na yon. And parang instead of buckling under the pressure, we can't let that do that to us kasi ang daming umaasa sa amin nung time na yon. And at times, galing na mismo sa mga patients namin, parang kami na lang yung last resort. Kami na yung last na matatakbuhan sila. So parang we push ourselves to become worthy and capable of the trust that was being placed to us during that time.
Since parang ang daming decision-making factors na nangyari on your side, so how do you think that your identity as a woman shapes your approach to leadership and decision-making in the realm of civic service?
To be honest, hindi na yun yung actually nasa top of mind ko when making decisions. It was more of how capable was I during that time. It was also how I can work with my team better. Kamusta yung work ethic ko? Kamusta yung attitude ko towards facing challenges and difficulties. So parang dahil nga never naman naging issue sa akin na dahil babae ako, ito lang yung kaya kong gawin. Parang it wasn't really a big factor into how I made my decisions. I made my decisions based on what I learned, what my training taught me, what the environment was like, what I learned then from my colleagues and the volunteers that we worked with. So I think what was important then during that time was I found a space for myself. I carved that space out for myself, and I made sure that I surrounded myself with people who had the same values, who had the same appreciation for the work that we had to do during that time.
Super important din actually, Miss, to surround yourself with people na pareho kayo ng values and like yung parang super safe space siya for you. Kasi dun usually nagkakaroon ng misunderstandings, especially sa part nyo na ang base nyo, tapos ang dami nyo pang dapat isipin. So, mas healthy rin siya sa utak actually, na hindi nyo na kailangang isipin yung environment. So, moving on, what initiatives or policies do you believe are crucial for fostering a more supportive environment for women in leadership roles within the civic organizations or kahit in general lang po na ano po yung policies na dapat i-foster para magkaroon ng supportive environment para sa mga babae?
I think more than policy, it's about changing individual behavior or the way we view gender in society. Like, kasi ako personally, it all boils down to respect and empathy. Na recognizing that the differences we have that is brought about by our genders is not actually something of a hindrance that allows us to lead. Parang hindi naman mutually exclusive yung dalawa. Like, you can recognize that there are things we have to do to accommodate those differences, but at the same time, realize that those differences do not intervene with how we work and how we relate with other people. Like, for example, ngayon, di ba, for women, for offices or commercial spaces, we allot like breastfeeding stations for our co-workers or members of the community who are mothers. Pero that doesn't mean that they can be managers or it doesn't mean that they can be leaders. Parang it's just parang recognizing na, oh, they need this, but it doesn't in any way affect what they can do or can't do. And then aside from that, dahil nga predominantly patriarchal pa rin yung society natin, we sometimes tend to overprotect women or the girls in our family. And I think the only way that they can experience or that they can realize their full potential is to experience things, give them the chance or give them the opportunity to train, to learn, to travel, things like that. Para din hindi manggaling sa atin yung notion na hindi ko kasi kaya yan, hindi ko kasi alam kung paano gawin yan. So, yun.
Actually agree kasi parang ever since before pa rin naman, like as we do research din about women empowerment, parang before pa tinatry na rin talaga i-put into the minds of the society itself na hindi naman porket babae kami, ganito. For example, in sports, hindi naman porket babae kami, hindi kami kaya mag-basketball, ganun. So, I think that it's really important to actually start with the family. Like, as you mentioned nga po na katulad po sa inyo na parang sa inyo never napamukha na mahina yung babae or like, hindi naman sa mahina, pero like, mas may capabilities yung mga lalaki sa ganitong bagay. So, I think that it really should start with the family para dun pa lang, safe space na yun for the babae itself na, okay, at least dito may safe space siya, may support system siya. And I think, yun nag-start para magkaroon ng mas accepting community for everyone. So, Ms. Kisha, as a Filipino woman leader, how can we further strengthen the value of volunteerism in the community?
volunteerism in the community. I think it starts with us realizing that we have more power and agency as citizens that we ever thought we have. Kasi I think like given our experience then during the People's Campaign, we saw from our perspective nung time na yon, parang we were actually apprehensive on how the campaign would turn out given the strong support for the other candidates. But the people came out, the people did what they thought they could do to contribute to the campaign. And we saw how that impacted then a lot of things. Like while we never considered na we lost actually kasi that People's Campaign gave us the push to continue our work just in a different form. So kaya din kami tuloy-tuloy sa pag-engage ng mga volunteer organizations in a lot of areas in the Philippines kasi we recognize their role in bettering their communities or helping empower their communities dahil sila yung nakakakilala sa mga tao doon. Sila yung closely working with the different agencies. And while there are things na we can't achieve or is out of our control, given that we are volunteers, there is so much more that we can advocate for and push for. For example, na lang siguro, yung volunteers namin sa Bayan E Consulta, they started out during the pandemic as just people trying to do something else. Dahil nga naka-isolate lahat, so syempre nakakabato din yon, and it doesn't do much for your mental health to be so isolated from the community, even from your co-workers or family members. So when we called for volunteers during Bayan E Consulta, ang daming nag-respond na parang ang common sentiment nila was we were actually just looking for something to do. We were looking for an avenue where we could help. Dahil nga naririnig na nila ang daming negative na nangyayari sa paligid. They were losing family members as well. And it just, parang they were looking for something hopeful to hold on to. Eventually, parang hindi rin namin in-expect. They became actually a very close-knit group of people. Naging friends sila outside DEK. Now, when we had our parang town hall to thank everyone who was involved with the project, akala mo like hindi nila first time magkita offline dahil nga we spent so many hours working together even online. Paglabas, like it was such a vibrant energy. It was very positive. And doon nila na-realize na we didn't even have to hold a position just to do something, just to be of help, like just simply working at home, like yun pa nga yung time na sobrang distance nila from actually the patients, but the fact na they use their cell phone to check in on a patient, it was a big deal, not just for the patient but also for them kasi they realized na I can do something like this pala even if sabihin natin na I'm just an ordinary citizen of the country. I can impact someone's life like this. Kasi nga, you never know when a small, kind thing can actually mean the world to someone else. And I think that the world can use more acts of goodwill, more acts of hope, kinder people right now. So I think just realizing na as ordinary citizens, we have the agency to do things to inspire change. I hope that pushes you to like be more active in things. Like we are not passive citizens of this country. We actually have a say, and not all countries are actually like that. So why not take this opportunity to use whatever skills we have, whatever opportunities come our way to contribute to something better or to do something better for the country.
Miss Kisha, baka may ano po kayo na parang next activity na kailangan ng volunteer. Andito po kami, actually. Willing
Sure.
po ang SBJMA to volunteer for Angat Buhay Foundation. If you
Sure.
need lang po, mag-volunteer po talaga kami. Kasi I feel like connecting with the community is also one step para lang ma-feel ng lahat na inclusive, kumbaga. We're promoting inclusivity to everyone. So, unfortunately, that wraps up today's episode and this episode. It's been inspiring to hear your insights, Ms. Kisha, as you share your journey and perspectives on women in leadership as it is highlighted in this episode. Once again, thank you, Ms. Kisha. Do you also have any last words for our audience that you want to part before we end?
I think thank you lang din for always bringing this topic into the discussion. Kasi like, while for me, it's not something new, I am aware that it's not always the experience ng lahat ng tao. So the fact that you guys are giving or providing this platform for these discussions to take place is already a big thing. And I hope that this inspires more people to talk about it and to explore possible ways on how they can help better our communities and our families. So yan lang. Thank you.
Once again, as this episode ends, we would like to remind you to be catalysts for change and empower each and every woman in our lives. With that, we thank you for following along Laban Mare, an SBJMA Engage led event, and we'll see you all again very soon. Thank you, Miss Kisha.
Thank you.